The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Witting. Today's guest is a return guest, Jason Criddle. I've described him in the past as a motivational speaker, but he's so much more than that. He's a prodigious writer. He's a successful businessman, and he built his career after, during and after a near-death experience that occurred while he was in the throes of getting some heart surgery taken care of. Jason, welcome back to NDE Radio.
Thanks for having me again, Lee. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, we were in the middle of talking about PTSD, and you had asked me to talk about it. There was a fellow on National Public Radio that I had mentioned to you who has written a book, I think it's called Tribe, and his name slips my mind, but what he said basically was it wasn't coming back from the military and all of the, chaos of being in firefights and that sort of thing that had people applying for PTSD support with the VA. It was their coming back to a dysfunctional society at home because they'd had so much comradeship, they'd had so much support, so much what he called tribal contact with the fellow soldiers who were protecting one another and working with one another and smoothing out disputes with one another because they relied so heavily on one another. They come back to this country and this society, and it was just such a mess that even though only 10% of the military who applied had been in actual combat, 50% of the troops coming back were applying for this because they were just blown away by the chaos of our world. So anyway, that's where that left off. What are your thoughts on that?
It's I'm thinking about this video that I watched a couple of years ago. It was a doctor who was talking about mind control. And he was talking about how we are susceptible to mind control and how things that we go through are mind control. But whenever you talk about that, I'm remembering a segment of the video where he was talking about thought ratios. And he was saying that a 1-to-1 thought ratio would be a balanced person. And what that would mean is one positive thought to one negative thought. And I mentioned some of these words or some of these numbers in my book, but I remember him saying that once you get to like a level like number, a 1 positive to 2 negative thoughts is depression, and 1 positive to 3 negative thoughts is depression, anxiety. And he said 1 positive to 4 negative is post-traumatic stress disorder. And then he said the entire United States operates on a level 4 right now. So if we are already operating in post-traumatic stress disorder, that would make perfect sense that the military is, that these kids that are coming back are having to take this medication to adapt for post-traumatic stress disorder. Because according to him, we're already living in it. So that makes a lot more sense. But I remember doing some math because he said the average person has 50,000 thoughts per day, and we're only aware of like 10% of those thoughts. So of the 50,000 thoughts we have, we're only aware of 10%. Now, it was like an even smaller percentage of these thoughts are positive. It's like a really ridiculously small percentage of these thoughts are positive. And if you think, whenever you go back and you extract out to the 50,000 thoughts, what it originally concludes to is you can only hear yourself giving yourself about 200 positive affirmations per day, but 50,000 times, whether you're aware of it or not, you're telling yourself you can't do it, and you're thinking about something negative that happened to you, and you're just digging your own hole in the ground, and you just can't come outside of that.
Wow.
And I think, to touch back on what we were talking about on the last show, one thing that I learned is that anger and dealing with the frustrated side of life that people don't like to deal with because we're taught not to deal with it, by dealing with your frustrations and I'm not talking about anger and punching walls and shouting at people. I'm talking about finding out why you're angry. The same doctor also believes that whenever you are feeling anxiety, it's because your heart is trying to pump your blood into your brain faster so your brain can insert a new idea into cells so that those cells can go back down to the heart and pump into your body faster so you can find a solution to your problem faster. That's what the action of anxiety is, but most people take a pill rather than dealing with the anxiety. And I believe that that's also where our society has gone, and that's what we need to try and pull ourselves out of, to get back to that dreaming again, and back to that imaginative and creative state, and back to that God state, and back to that working together as for one common purpose state. We need to all realize that we're all human beings and we all have the same problems, and we've all dealt with the same childhoods, and we all have the same issues, and we're all ultimately doing the same thing. So if we can break down the levels, break down the labels, then we wouldn't have to be dealing with prescription medication. We wouldn't have to be dealing with, a separation of belief systems and religions and fascism and racism and all these things that are separating us, because we would just realize, hey, we're human beings, and we can deal with these emotions healthily, and we can deal with these emotions together. And I think we're forced to isolate ourselves to deal with emotions. And what I've done is I started writing books and talking to people to deal with those emotions,
Yeah. I think one of the reasons that politicians find the American public so vulnerable to fear-mongering is the fact that we are just so dysfunctional. I mean, we are suffering from a certain level of PTSD. And so a right-wing commentator can get on the radio and scare people to death with all sorts of conspiracy theories, and all that does is it alienates us one from the other. It's the background to racism and denominational disputes in religion and all of that stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's what I was saying also on the last show, is that's what our media is geared towards. And we have a couple of generations of people who grew up with that medium, and they believe that, everything that happens on the TV and everything that happens on the news is real. They believe, because they were raised their entire lives to think it is real, and not realizing that it's just kind of a facade that's there to make them vote and think in a certain direction for certain people's benefit.
Right. It's really engineered, and you can see the differential in the way Trump has been covered versus Bernie Sanders, for instance, in this last campaign, how the media plays to those things. I don't know if you remember when Ross Perot ran for president, but his vice presidential candidate was a guy named James Stockdale, and he was mocked heavily by commentators in the press because when he was first introduced, he came on the air and he asked, "Where am I and why am I here?" And everyone thought he had Alzheimer's or something, but I think he was driving at some pretty key questions, questions that we should all be asking ourselves. Where am I? Why am I here?
I remember Ross Perot, and I remember people wearing Ross Perot shirts, I'm pretty sure. But I don't think I was old enough to remember whenever he was running. But, to touch on previous conversations, I think what Bernie Sanders is doing is amazing as far as building a grassroots campaign. And I think it's amazing that he has so much support of so many people that are my age, as well as his age. I think the news is definitely directing people to vote and believe in one way. And fortunately, because of technology and because of the new way that we're communicating and the fact that people my age are starting to create their own media and creating their own news sources, Bernie Sanders is catching a foothold. And I hope he can hold on to it. I hope he can do something with it. It'll be amazing, but it's going to take, like I said, more people. I don't think I'm any better or different than the average person. I think that I just look at things differently. We all look at things differently. But more of us have to be willing to stand up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If he had been given more airtime, I know he's done amazing things on the internet, but if he'd been given more airtime, he might have built a really strong consensus within the 99% that he was representing, that he is representing. And that would have, that would have overwhelmed the divisiveness of the Trump arguments and so forth.
Of course. And unfortunately, the same people that control everything are the ones that control the airtime.
Yeah. You wrote, we are an immaculate form of God's greatest creation with a brain traveling into the past and future. Do you think we have special gifts for foresight, prophecy that we're just not using?
Yeah, I believe that's what dreaming is, and the imagination, and we talked about dreams before. I believe that the reason why our dreams are so fuzzy and we have no control is because we have a disconnected mind from our spiritual existence, and so people experience stress in their daily life, and then they go to sleep at night and they don't get a restful, regenerative sleep because they have stressful, anxious dreams, and then most people are not using their imagination and forward thinking in order to climb their way into a different existence. We are doing it more and more. I believe that that's what the younger generation is starting to do now as more entrepreneurs come up and more artists and everything come up. But that's what an entrepreneur is. That's what an artist is. It's a God-realized being. It's a person that's using their brain to go forth. I believe that we are all God, and we all have the ability to create. But right now we're sharing this one co-creative experience. So the more powerful the mind, the more tolerant the mind. I believe they call it anonymity, the ability to assess a situation and not act emotionally on it, the ability to choose the direction in even a short period of time. I believe we all have that ability, but we are geared to react to things in certain ways, and we are geared to not think, and we are geared to not use our imagination. All of our creative forces, everything, all of our powers, they are in us right now. And people call it the third eye, the pineal gland. I call it the first eye. You have the first eye, and then you have the second and the third, which we were given after our God-given first eye was developed. We all have the ability to create and see and change, and it's right here. We just have to be willing to go against the grain, go against the way, and start working on ourselves, our inner selves, building more value in ourselves, thinking that we're no longer thinking that we're a job title or a label of our skin or anything like that.
I think in one of the first conversations you and I had, you had, it was a really interesting take on being a self-made man, which was that you think we're actually creating ourselves in these bodies, on this earth. Maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, like the movie Avatar, we were speaking of avatars. I believe that we are all an archetype. I believe that we're all trying to push towards this archetype. Everybody wants to be healthy. Everybody wants to be a hero. Every single person, I would hope every single person, but most people would give their life to save another human being. It's something that's inside us. I've stood in front of a ton of people, talking to a ton of people, and I tell people, hey, everybody, imagine a Buddhist monk on TV, on a movie or whatever, chanting the word Om. And on 3, everybody's going to chant Om for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, and everybody goes Om. And they all do it in the exact same pitch. And I didn't tell them what pitch to pitch. They just do it because it's already inside them. It's something that's already instilled within them. And I believe that we all have these things that are inside us because of that unified God theory, the collective consciousness theory. There's so many different things that so many people call it. But, if somebody wants to look at VPUs and neural imprinting like we were talking about in that conversation, I believe that we could very well be a higher form of creation, a God real-life being that we're all trying to achieve to be in this life. And the reason why we're trying to achieve that in this life is because we are avatars for a training program that is teaching us how to become better God-like beings. To me, that makes more sense. It makes more sense that our life is a simulation of something that we are trying to excel and become better outside of this because of all the shared beliefs that are hidden inside of modern day religions. Even though, like we were talking about non-denomination, even though there's all these different things going in all these different directions, atheists, agnostics, mathematical people, the ancient Greeks, they were all looking at the same calculations. They were all looking at the same things. When it comes down to it, our DNA breaks down into computer code. Somebody could write a human being in a piece of software. And the further that we go down this road that we're on, the more technologies come out that are showing us that we are exactly what I believe we are. That conversation of that soldier that had that VPU implanted in his head, and now he's living a completely different life where he believes he's a healthy human being. That, to me, sounds exactly like what we are. Let's load up this program, because the brain can travel back and forth, the future, the past, the present. It can do it so many times, trillions of times over. The brain is so powerful, but people say that we only use 10% of our brains. That's not true. We use all of our brains all the time. We just don't use the computing power. It's like somebody that buys a $5,000 computer to get on social media. It doesn't make any sense. So we can use our powers of projection. We can use our powers to change the world. We can use our powers to create stuff in this reality, influence decisions, and all that. Why can't we use that same brain that has those same powers to implant a reality where we can go and live out a life of a person and see what we can do in that life, in that construct, and create whatever we can for ourselves in that reality? And then whenever that body dies or this body dies, then all of a sudden we are back into that construct of an energy, light, God-created being saying, hey, welcome back, Jason. Hey, what's up, Lee? I haven't seen you in about 100 years. All right, man. Well, hey, this time I'm going to load myself up as a Doberman. What are you going to be this time? And you're going to be like, I'm going to be like an 18th century orphan girl. And I'll be like, all right, man, we'll see you in 100 years. And then we do a fist bump, and then we get back in the machine, and we come out here, and we realize it. We're supposed to realize it while we're here. That's what we're supposed to do. And that's why so many people feel it, but they're not doing it because they're not geared to do it. They're not being pointed in that direction.
But that would imply that this is really quite like a game, that we are avatars to our souls, and perhaps success in this life is not anything more than winning or doing well in a simulation.
Right. Just hitting those achievements and getting those milestone points and everything. Right.
Do you feel that that's? But you think that's important because of some deeper reason?
Yes. I mean, whenever somebody achieves something, we have a sudden release of dopamine. We have a sudden feeling of accomplishment, and we're supposed to be feeling that on like a daily basis and to feel good about ourselves. But most people don't feel those accomplishments because they're not setting up milestones and achievement points. And even the shopping app that we have built for our users to generate income on there, we built milestones and achievements and everything into the program for them to get bigger rewards and bigger bonuses and make more money. Half of Argentina is for sale right now, and I want to buy it so I can build an app-based society, a value-based society where everybody gets a living, earning wage, and then everything is controlled by apps and computers, and people can write books, and they can save lives, and they can go to school to become doctors, and they can do all this stuff similar to what they're doing now, but their value and everything is calculated. And so the more value a person builds in themselves, the higher the achievements, the better the bonuses, the milestones, the rewards that they can get. But everybody starts off on a level playing field. That way it's fair for people. And even people like me, dreamers that are being pushed outside of society, children with autism that are being pushed outside of society, your average entrepreneur or artist who's being pushed out of society, we should be able to build value in ourselves in a way that's different than people think. Like just because I don't have a 9 to 5 job, but I don't know many people who have read 20 books, and I've written 20 in the last couple of years. So there's different ways to build value, and I believe that we could all, if we just all understood that and we all started thinking about it a different way, then that's the life that we can live. We can all create that utopia that we're all reaching for.
One of the things that really opens our eyes is having had a near-death experience or even an out-of-body experience. It means so much more is possible, when we recognize the eternal nature of our souls. And there's estimated something like 774 near-death experiences in this country alone every day. Now, if there were some way we could get those people to acknowledge what they'd seen and to act in accordance with the big picture, we could change the society in a very short time.
Oh, yeah, man. It would be amazing. And I think that's the reason why we need people like you, Lee. It might sound cliche, but that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to gather these experiences and share these experiences so more people can come out of the woodwork, so we can, have more people sharing, and then more people that are also listening to the information that they can provide. I think it's huge, and I think it's a must. What we do, you and me, it's no longer a luxury. This is what people need to be watching every day and listening to every day. They don't need the stuff that's been forced into people for the last 100 years. They need a completely different medium now.
Yeah. And we need to rebuild a different world, because the way it's going, the environmental degradation and the huge contrast between the rich and the poor, all of the things that that Bernie's been talking about. if we don't correct those, there's not going to be much left.
Oh, you're right, man. We need more people to share stories. We need more people to write books. We need more people to start YouTube and Vimeo channels, and more people to want to be a voice. And people can take any experience, not just a near-death experience. People can take an abusive experience. They can take a cancer experience. They can take getting a raise and getting a new car experience, and they can teach somebody else something that can ultimately make our society better, a lot better than what we're living right now. So more people, people just need to stand up and be willing to share their life with more people.
Right. Let me ask you this. You're very into technology. There's a computer that is learning as it goes along that recently beat the world champion Go player, simply by observing how he played and getting better and better. Do you think there's a threat from advanced technology, from robots, from computers that can think a whole lot faster and smarter than we can?
I think, it's similar to the conversation we were having about VPUs, virtual processing units. VPU is what it would go into a self-driving car, or a car that would be able to park itself. But of course, there are better, more advanced versions of VPUs. That's what they put in that soldier from that conversation as well. I do believe that we are at a stage where computers can learn and process things at a faster rate than we can. I do not believe that we are at a stage where we can put our emotional, childish, dysfunctional habits into a computer, and then that computer think to itself, wow, these people are idiots, and we're going to sabotage them and take over. And you know why I believe that? Because if we were ultimately able to implant our dysfunctional, anxious consciousness into a computer, I think the computer would more than likely kill itself and not want to exist with us, because we would always grow and populate and build and always overcome whatever the computer would try to. I think the computer would just shut down. And that would be it. And then we would just have to start over with rocks and sticks and hatchets and stuff,
Yeah. They interviewed a man who'd built a robot on the internet. He was on YouTube, and they asked a question something like, "Will robots ever hurt humans?" And he turned to his robot and said, "Would you ever hurt a human being?" And under his breath, he said, "I hope you say no." The robot responded, "We learn from human beings. Of course we'll hurt human beings." Because the level of input was only as good as the person putting it in, and we can do damage to one another.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if we're at a point yet where we have figured out how to, overcome ourselves. I think we can destroy ourselves very easily, but I don't know if we're at a point where I think we're too smart and too intuitive to overcome ourselves, but we could also be too dumb and too stubborn to overcome ourselves. It's a kind of a catch-22. I think that humans are here to do whatever whatever the person in charge tells humans to do. And we'll keep doing it, whether it's battling robots or destroying the environment. It doesn't matter.
Jason, we are once again just about out of time, but I'd like you to take a minute and talk about any books that you didn't mention the first time around, and also about how people might get in touch with you or find a website for you.
Yeah, you can go to Jason Criddle, that's CRIDDLE.com. I have a link to a lot of my books on there. But we have the Smarter app. It's SMARTR. It's a lot easier to trademark a made-up word, I promise. We have our Smarter app, which we designed to help people build assets, money-making tool through a typical shopping app. We put a compensation structure similar to an MLM compensation structure on a shopping app that has millions of items, and it's going to have tons more brands and more stores and stuff that people see every day. I believe that this has created a new industry, and it can create a new way that people thrive and people build an income, because people can now use our app to share with people and earn an income doing it. And at the same time, with the launch of our app, we're also opening up our Smarter Foundry, our first location in the DFW area in Dallas. We're helping support students and entrepreneurs through the struggles that entrepreneurs and students and artists stuff have to go through in order to build a business or build something outside of society's standards. So
wow.
we have, so instead of an entrepreneur having to go out and build their business on their own, they can come to our place to have 24-hour access to showers and daycare and Wi-Fi and computers and a gym and publishing and investors and networking and conference rooms. They have access to everything for $200 a month. It's a nonprofit organization. We're putting everything back into the organization for the entrepreneurs. So people
Jason,
can look up the Smarter app and the Smarter Foundry. That's how they can find us. And it would definitely help save the world.
Thank you so much, Jason. This has really been fun. Be sure to look for Jason's books on Amazon or Kindle. And if you'd like to listen to this show again or Jason's previous show, just go to our website at nderadio.org, and there'll be information at the IONS website for our Orlando, Florida conference coming up very shortly in July. And I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again, Jason. This is Lee Witting saying thanks for listening.